I wasn't invited, obviously, but I followed anyway, hanging back just far enough that they couldn't send me home without a scene. It was the middle of the afternoon. Bright, hot, completely unremarkable. We walked the dirt track that ran along the tree line, kicking gravel, arguing about nothing. And that's when I heard it, an engine behind us, on a road that led to exactly one place and nowhere else. The car crawled past us, then stopped up ahead like it was waiting. None of us said anything. We just slowed down. I was 11 the summer it happened. My cousin Marta, who was 13 and infinitely cooler than me, had a friend named Claudia who used to sleep over on weekends. That July, the two of them decided they were going to sneak out to the old cemetery past the train tracks, the one nobody used anymore because the parish that maintained it had closed decades earlier. Weeds up to your knees. Headstones leaning like they were trying to whisper to each other. It was the kind of place that felt made for 13-year-olds who wanted to prove something. Then it started reversing. There were 4 men inside, maybe 5, packed close together, and every one of them was looking at us like we were something they'd been sent to collect. Claudia's face went white. Marta, being Marta, squared her shoulders and told them to get lost the second the window rolled down. I remember her voice cracking on the last word even though she was trying so hard to sound brave. That's when the driver's door opened. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I grabbed Claudia's sleeve and ran, and I heard Marta's footsteps behind me a half-second later, and then I heard the car doors slam and the engine roar, and I understood, with a kind of clarity I'd never felt before, that we could not outrun it on the road. Into the trees! I screamed, and we went crashing off the path into the underbrush, branches tearing at our arms, not caring, not stopping. We ended up crouched behind a fallen trunk deep enough in the woods that the car couldn't follow, and for what felt like 20 minutes we watched it circle the tree line at the edge of the field, engine snarling, headlights sweeping the grass like they were hunting for something that had gone to ground. They knew exactly where we'd disappeared. They were making sure we knew they knew. And then, faint at first, sirens. None of us had a phone that day. None of us had called anyone. But the sound got louder, and the car spun out and tore off toward the cemetery gates, and 2 police vehicles blew past our hiding spot in the same direction moments later. We stayed frozen behind that log even after the engines faded, because right around then, we heard 3 sharp cracks echo out from somewhere near the old chapel ruins. We never told our parents. We were too scared of getting caught sneaking out to admit what we'd nearly walked into. It's been almost a decade now, and I still don't know who those men were, what those sounds were, or why the police showed up at the exact moment we needed them to. I just know that if they hadn't, I don't think I'd be the one telling this story. Part 2. The Voice by the Fence. Fast forward 6 years. I was 17, home for my first year away at school, and I'd gotten back into the habit of evening runs, the kind where you tell yourself you'll be back before dark and then somehow you're not. That night I left at 9, later than I meant to, and told myself the usual route would be fine. I'd run it 100 times. Everyone in that part of town knew everyone else. I used to roll my eyes at girls who crossed the street to avoid strangers. I thought that was a city thing, a paranoid thing. I was wrong about a lot that night. The run itself started easy, warm air, cicadas, enough light to see the path. I passed 2 guys walking the other direction, gave them a nod, nothing strange. It wasn't until I reached the turnaround point near the old cemetery fence that things shifted. It had gone properly dark by then, the kind of dark where the trees stop looking like trees and start looking like shapes. I stopped to catch my breath under the big oak near the gate, staying off the bench, too close to the fence, too much shadow pooling around it. I wasn't scared exactly. Just alert in a way I hadn't been 10 minutes earlier. A bike passed on the road ahead, one headlight cutting a thin line through the black. That was the way I needed to go home, so I figured it was as good a time as any. I started jogging. Then I heard voices. 2 of them, maybe more, drifting from somewhere just past the tree line. I slowed down, straining to catch words, and then one voice came through clear enough that my whole body went cold. That girl right there, I could just pull her into the bushes. I did not stop. I did not turn around. If he knew I'd heard him, I had no idea what that would change, and I wasn't willing to find out. I drifted off the path onto the grass verge, putting distance between us in the dark, watching the small glow of a phone screen bob near where the voices had come from. Then the unmistakable click of bike gears shifting. He was on a bike. That should have made me feel safer. It didn't. I watched his light shrink and vanish down the road, waited another full minute just to be sure, and then I ran. Actually ran, harder than I ever had in my life, flinching at every passing car, gripping my water bottle like it was a weapon, until I hit the first streetlight near my house and finally let myself stop and shake. I still don't know who he was talking about. I've never let myself consider the alternative. My friend Tomas walks me home some nights, and one night I walk him instead. It depends on the week. That particular night it was my turn to walk back alone, and before I left I did what I always do. Pocketed my folding knife, more for comfort than anything, and left every light in the house on so it looked occupied. The walk home cuts past the same cemetery from the second story, just from the opposite end. During the day it's nothing, overgrown grass, crooked iron fence, unremarkable. At night it's a wall of solid black behind the trees, and my old classmate is buried there, so I've always gone quiet passing it out of some instinct I've never bothered to name. That night, I turned the corner onto the cemetery street and stopped dead. A man was standing at the edge of the sidewalk, right by the fence line, easily a head taller than me and built like he took up more space than the shadows could hide. I couldn't see his face. I could feel him looking at mine. I waited a few seconds, hoping he'd move first, hoping he'd cross, hoping for anything that would let me avoid walking near him. He didn't move. So I stepped off the curb and gave him the widest arc I could manage without breaking into a full run, thumb pressed hard against the ridges of the knife in my pocket the entire time. I told myself I was being paranoid. My gut told me otherwise, and my gut had never once been wrong before. At the crosswalk, I glanced back. He was walking too. Same direction. Not close, but not a coincidence either. I crossed early, cut the corner faster than I needed to, and at the top of the next hill I let myself look back one more time. He was still behind me. Still coming. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember the side street appearing on my left and taking it without thinking, sprinting the last 3 blocks and locking every door behind me the second I got inside, checking windows, locking my own bedroom door like it was one more wall between me and whatever that was. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just a guy heading somewhere. But I think about the way he waited by that fence until I'd already passed before he started walking, and some nights I still can't shake it. Part 4. The Hole by the Small Headstone. Years earlier, a group of us went camping in a stretch of reclaimed forest a few hours from the city. The kind of place that used to be farmland before the government bought it back during a hard decade and let the trees take over. Deep in that forest sits a scattering of graves nobody visits anymore, most of the headstones worn down to blank stone by a century of rain. We'd set up camp close to the gravel access road, which meant hikers drifted past all day. We waved, said hello, went back to our fire. After dark, a man walked through our camp's edge. Average build, average height, nothing that should have stood out, except for the red-filtered headlamp completely hiding his face and the long-handled spade resting against his shoulder. We called out a friendly greeting like we had to everyone else that day. He didn't answer. Didn't even glance our way. Just kept walking into the dark like we weren't there at all. We let it go. People are strange in the woods at night. The next morning was clear and quiet, and being restless before anyone else woke up, I decided to walk the mile out to the little cemetery to see it in daylight. I didn't wake anyone. It seemed too pleasant a morning for anything to feel wrong. It was peaceful, right up until I stepped through the gate and saw the disturbed ground near one of the smallest headstones. A hole, several feet deep, dug in careful terraced steps like whoever made it planned to come back and finish the job. At the bottom lay a long-handled spade. The same one, I was almost certain, the man from the night before had been carrying. The headstone beside it belonged to a child, the name worn nearly smooth, a date somewhere in the early 1900s still faintly legible. And that was when the second thought hit me, worse than the first. There was exactly one way in and out of that cemetery, and I hadn't passed a soul on my way there. which meant whoever had dug that hole had very possibly heard me coming, and might still be watching from the trees. I didn't run. I made myself walk, fast but even, all the way back to camp, and the second I told my friends what I'd found, we packed up without discussion. On the way out, we found a caretaker's number posted on the gate and called it in immediately. Someone from the local sheriff's office called back a few hours later asking me to repeat everything I'd seen. I never heard from them again. I have no idea what they found in that hole, or who came back to finish digging it. Part 5. The Woman in the Bushes. The last story isn't mine, it belongs to my mother and my grandmother, who still tell it every December like it's tradition, which I suppose by now it is. Every year around the holidays, they visit a cemetery on the edge of the village where my great-grandparents are buried, always in the early evening because that's the only time that works around everyone's schedules. In winter, early evening there might as well be midnight, a cold, wet dark that presses in fast. That year, my father drove them and waited in the car at the front gate while they walked in to lay flowers, same as always. They finished up, quiet and efficient in the cold, and started back toward the car past the section near the gate where the groundskeepers pile old wreaths and dead flowers, an area screened by a thick line of hedges. As they passed, something rustled. At first they assumed an animal. Then the rustling grew louder, more deliberate, unmistakably the sound of a person shifting their weight, trying, or failing, to stay hidden. My grandmother, never one to be quiet about anything, called out toward the hedge, half joking, assuming it was my father playing a prank. "Very funny, we can see you." That's when the sound of the car engine reached them from the gate. My father hadn't moved. He was still sitting there, warming the car, exactly where they'd left him. My mother and grandmother didn't wait to find out who was in those bushes. They ran, actually ran, and threw themselves into the car so hard my father thought something had happened to one of them, and it wasn't until they were halfway home, hearts still slamming, that anyone managed a full sentence. To this day, none of them know who was crouched in that hedge on a freezing December evening, watching them walk past, close enough to reach out and touch. I don't have a tidy ending for any of this. No arrests I can confirm, no explanations that ever came back to us, no name to put on the man with the spade or the shape in the hedge. Just 5 nights, 1 cemetery, and a very long list of things I've decided I don't actually want to know. Some doors are better left shut. I think that cemetery taught me that a long time before I understood why.